Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl Dr. Kiiyonna Jones, and today's video is specifically for registered nurses who are thinking about starting their med spa. I'm going to cover the 4 states that registered nurses should not start their med spa in. Stay tuned. So welcome everyone. It's your girl Dr. Kiiyonna Jones, and I am owner and founder of Luxe Beauty and Wellness Boutique, as well as Luxe Beauty Academy, and I help nurses start their own aesthetic practices. I've been doing this for a little over 5 years. I've spent a lot of time researching and learning what is the best states, or should say, what are the best states for nurses to start their med spas. So this video is a little bit different because I'm going to speak about 4 states that I strongly recommend registered nurses think twice before they start their aesthetic business in. So let's go ahead and dive into those 4 states. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I'm clear. This video is for registered nurses who are thinking of starting their aesthetic business, not nurse practitioners. Of course, I'm not talking to physician assistants or medical doctors. I'm really referring to nurse practitioners. I do have a video or some videos that talk specifically about nurse practitioners, but that's not this one. So let's go ahead and get started. There are 4 states where I would definitely not start my aesthetic business in as a registered nurse. I would do one of 2 things. Either I would go back to school to become a nurse practitioner, and in one of these states, you can't even inject as a nurse practitioner, which I'll tell you about. So let's talk about how registered nurses kind of fit into this whole aesthetic space, right? As a registered nurse, you are not allowed to practice medicine. And so as a result, you are required to have a state-identified medical provider to supervise you or be over you in the practice, right? I want to make sure, and I talk about this in other videos, there is a difference between ownership and practitioner. Oh, and by the way, you guys, I'm gonna try to make these videos less than 10 minutes, but y'all know your girl be like talking a lot. So I'm gonna try to keep it at 8 minutes. But anyway, so since you have a nursing scope of practice, you have to have medical oversight, and a state identified medical provider can do that. And the reason I'm saying state identified is because in some states, a nurse practitioner can be your medical director. In other states, it has to be a medical doctor. So depending on what the state says, or who the state says can be your medical director, that's going to determine who I would suggest you to connect with. Like, it could be either a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor, or both, or only a medical doctor. So that, because of that oversight and supervision that has to happen, and because you have to function within your scope of practice as a nurse, it is extremely important that you have a medical provider. Now, the reason why I would not start med spas if I was a registered nurse in these states is because they don't allow you to actually practice. So if you are trying to own a med spa and your goal is for you to be a practitioner, then you definitely need to make sure you can actually do the work, like you can inject. So the first state I'm going to tell you guys is the state of good old Florida. Now, why Florida when Florida is actually kind of like one of the capitals, because there's like 3 capitals, right? Southern California, New York, and then Florida. And then if I was to say 4 would be Northern California, but definitely Florida is in the top 3. So because of that, you would think, like, why can't a registered nurse, or shouldn't a registered nurse open their own aesthetic practice? Well, first of all, let's take the ownership piece. If you want to own a med spa in the state of Florida, you can. Anyone can. Okay, so as a registered nurse, you will fall under the bucket of anyone, right? So a business person can own, anyone can own, but can you be a practitioner is the question under your RN license, and the answer is no. In the state of Florida, registered nurses are not allowed to inject neurotoxin nor dermal fillers. So because of that, would it make sense for you to own a med spa? Not unless you were willing to hire or bring someone on, which is definitely an option. But if your question is, should I own a med spa as an RN, and you have no intention on hiring someone and starting it as a brick and mortar business, but yet you want to be more of a solopreneur, then my answer is absolutely not. You cannot inject Therefore, you should not start your business if you want to be the injector and that is your intention. So Florida, not the best place for RNs to start their business. Start their aesthetic business. However, if you wanted to go back to school for aesthetics, then definitely have a go at it. The second state that I strongly do not recommend nurses or registered nurses start their aesthetic business in is the state of Louisiana. Now, let me tell you about Louisiana. It's very interesting, Louisiana. This is one of these strict corporate practice of medicine states, but what they have done is they do allow nurses to inject toxin, but now they're starting to say you have to have a physician on site and you cannot inject dermal fillers at all. So there has to be a physician to inject dermal fillers. So before, here recently, it's been a lot of changes in their laws. And so now they are saying, if you do inject as an RN toxin, like Botox, you guys may know it as Botox. If you do, you need to have a physician present in order for that to happen. But then they're saying when it comes to dermal fillers, you can't do that at all. Now, Louisiana is one of those states where anyone can actually own a med spa. Again, same like Florida, ownership is ownership. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want to own a med spa, you absolutely can. But if you are RN looking to own and be practitioner, you are not able to do that. So Louisiana, for RNs, I definitely wouldn't do it. That's just what it is. Louisiana is one of those states. State number 3 would be Alabama. Alabama is very interesting. That state is a state in which no one except a medical doctor can inject neurotoxins or dermal fillers. In 2004, the Board of Registered Nursing released a news brief that said no one except a medical doctor can inject neurotoxins or any type of dermal filler, right? And so that alleviates not only registered nurses, but also nurse practitioners. And so because of that, Alabama is definitely off the list. And number 4 is the state of Mississippi. I don't know if you guys noticed, there's kind of a trend in these states. Most of them are really down south and extremely red states. So the medical board just has more of an influence. And so in my opinion, I don't have any proof of this, but I really believe it's because of the medical board and how strong they are. Because there has been bills that have been on the floor, voted for, and the medical board came and said no, especially in the state of Louisiana. The medical board came through and said no, and they deadened it on the floor, even though they had the votes, okay? So some of these states, just the medical board has more involvement. Mississippi, another red state. Mississippi is one of those same states where they do not allow you to inject neurotoxins nor dermal fillers. And again, if your intention is to own and operate and practice in your med spa as a registered nurse, you are not able to do that. So those are the 4 states that I suggest. If you are a registered nurse, you do not open your practice in those states, okay? As I talked about in the state of Alabama, even if you were a nurse practitioner, you still cannot inject toxins or dermal fillers. So it's going to be a lose for you. Now, what does that mean, Dr. Jones? Does that mean just forget it? Do I need to move? Well, it depends. If you are one who really want to open, you have a couple options. Except Alabama, you can go back to school for NP. And then you can inject. I will tell you, I've helped a lot of clients in southern states like Mississippi, Louisiana, even who are nurse practitioners. And there's a lot of weird things going on right now. So for example, in the wellness space, when it comes to semaglutide, I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's technically for type 2 diabetes, but it's been shown and proven. It is a weight loss drug, but for the most part, it's for diabetics. And the state of Mississippi just recently stopped allowing pharmacies to provide compounded versions of the semaglutide, which means that a lot of nurse practitioners who are offering this were doing really well in their businesses, and now that's done, right? So just weird things they have been doing like that in Mississippi and Louisiana. Another thing is when it comes to IV hydration businesses, they're starting to get really strict on the compounding of vitamins, which has always been a federal law, by the way. But now basically, and you have the option in a lot of these compound pharmacies to receive your vitamins already, for the most part, compounded, so you don't have to break the USP law. But they're starting to say even that's not enough. So it's one of those things. Of course, I'm not telling anyone to move, but you definitely need to make sure that, first of all, you're able to inject if that's your plan. But if it's not your plan, then just be prepared to hire someone who is qualified to do that, or partner with someone who is qualified to do that. Unfortunately, you know, there's been a lot of changes because nurses are stepping out. We are, you know, that influx of nurses who are stepping into entrepreneurship is because we are just burnt out, overworked, and tired, and looking for another avenue where we can have all the things that we love about being a nurse, minus all the things that we don't like, right? So the good feeling of being able to help people appreciating you, being able to set your own schedule and not have to work long hours is what I love about being an aesthetic nurse, and owning my own practice. But then at the same time, all the politics, the BS, the abuse from patients, the lack of appreciation from administration, I don't have to worry about that. And so that is why a lot of nurses are making the decision to come into the aesthetic space. But what's happening, the states are seeing this, and some states are just not having it. So that's my spew. I'm trying to keep it less than 10 minutes. Honestly, I don't even know if I did. I have to look. But what I do want you to do is, if you enjoyed this video and you found it informative, go ahead and like and subscribe. Make sure you give me some comments, you guys. Your comments really give me life. And plus, you give me content, so I can actually look at your comments like, oh, okay, this is a great question. I'll go ahead and answer this. And I usually comment in the chat and let you know, or respond in the chat and say, hey, I'll make a video about this. Also, if you know some nurse friends who is interested in nurse entrepreneurship or interested in aesthetics, this is the channel. I'll be making sure I post weekly content. The goal is twice a week, but at minimum once a week. So make sure you tune in.